I remember I was writing this script and I was deep into it enough. So it was like 3-4 months into it when news broke that there was this film called Minari at Sundance that just won everything. And I saw a picture from it and I read the synopsis and I thought, fuck.
데이빗은 어때? 데이빗 좋은 이름 같지 않아?
Hey, Riceboy! Loser! Give it back! Give me back my glasses! Riceboy! Riceboy! Riceboy!
I want to start actually kind of from the beginning about where you got this idea and how you were able to fund it and the times that we're in right now. So let's just start with what gave you the inspiration to do this film.
I'd always wanted to make movies, and I'd always thought that if I did make a film, that I would want to make a film based on something like this, based on my experience growing up as an immigrant in the 90s. And I knew that this film would cost more money than I was able to raise initially for a first feature. And I didn't go to film school. I didn't make short films, so I didn't have access to, certain grants or funds or, connections. And my background was in theater, so I was doing a lot of plays, and I'd written this one-act play, which we then turned into a feature film. And that was sort of like an exercise almost, just to see if I could make a film. I mean, one can believe all you want, but until you actually do it, it's still, it remains a mystery. So I did that, and then that did so well enough that it provided opportunities to try and make something else, try and make something a little bigger. And as soon as that was done, I was, I started telling people, I'm going to make this other film right away, and it's going to be about a Korean boy and his mother, and it's going to be set in the 90s, and then a bunch of stuff's going to happen, and then they're going to go back to Korea. And that was really, and it was just kind of, for the first little while, I was just kind of making it up just to see people's reactions. And enough people said, oh, that could be interesting. You should pursue that. And so I did. And I just started by just writing down scene ideas based on things that actually happened to me, memories of, memorable moments of my childhood, things that occurred to my mom, my dad, family, friends. And I just started to put stuff together. And over time, I was able to formulate a storyline inspired from those events.
When did you start really putting this together? What year was this?
I officially started working on this November 2019.
Okay. I ask you that because I want to know if it was post Crazy Rich Asians, when
it was post Crazy Rich Asians.
It was when the wave was starting, right? Really concentrating and centering Asian characters, and making it more mainstream. Would you say, or would you say was it like right before you still had to really fight to have this movie be recognized or to be made at the level you wanted to make it?
No, I never had to fight to get this made. I don't know if Crazy Rich Asians, I mean, would you consider Crazy Rich Asians sort of like when it all kind of started?
I would say it was the tipping point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was definitely after. We'll put it this way. I remember I was writing this script and I was deep into it enough. So it was like 3-4 months into it when news broke that there was this film called Minari at Sundance that just won everything. And I saw a picture from it and I read the synopsis and I thought, fuck. I have to abandon this thing. I think I'm done. Like, I don't think I can make this movie. It just sounded so similar on paper. And then I was just frantically started reaching out to friends who were in the film industry, and I found a friend who saw it, and I said, "You read my script, you saw the film. Like, am I like, do I have to abandon this project?" And my friend said, "Like, no, you're fine. It is its own thing. Your script, there's enough differences that you can still go ahead and make your film." You wonder I wondered if people would find it interesting enough to fund or support. But as soon as the script was done, and as soon as I started to send it out to people, the reception was generally quite positive. I mean, we had the odd person here and there who thought the script made no sense or that it was pointless. But for the most part, people really started to respond to it. And that's when I thought, okay, like this might be able to get made. And I don't know if that has anything to do with, Crazy Rich Asians or Minari or Farewell or,
Parasite.
Yes, Parasite won all the Oscars during the time I was writing this. People ask me a lot, like, do I feel like the success of those films contributed to, the successes of this film? I mean, it's hard to say, but I don't think it hurt. Well, you know what? I think it helped as much as it hurt. Yeah, I think it's been affected by it, but there's been so much positive, but there's also some negative sides to the comparisons.
Tell me why you chose to have it located in Canada as opposed to the States. It's because of your role.
Look, I'm Canadian. I wanted to make something as personal and honest and authentic as possible, because, I guess it is a criticism that some people have about this film, which is that, there's been plenty of other films about the immigrant experience in North America. That is entirely true. No one can dispute that. There's been plenty of films about young children and their mother or father. Can't dispute that either. There's been a lot of films about coming-of-age stories. And so I figured, in order to not be completely redundant, I should make something that only I in the world could make. Or at least, I wanted to believe that. And in order to do that, I just had to pull from as many personal experiences as possible and ground it in as much real, intimate, personal connections as possible.
So people who are watching this interview will watch it before they get to see the movie. So it's kind of leading up to it. So what can people expect from Riceboy Sleeps?
It's emotional. I think it's emotionally, it's an emotional roller coaster. I hope, people will feel joy and sadness and rage and sort of all the feelings. They can expect a story about, that focused on a mother and her son. I think you can expect seeing a female Asian protagonist that has a level of depth and complexity, strength and vulnerability, a fully three-dimensional character that you don't often see in North American films.
What struck me, not only from your trailer, but from what we're seeing in general about the storytelling around the immigrant experience, is this beautiful humanization of it that we were never afforded to before. We've seen the humanization and the complexity and the nuances of a lot of other different cultures, but specifically, especially the Korean-Canadian experience has been, there's been almost nothing to really grasp onto.
No, whenever you see Koreans in films, well, at least back in like the days I was growing up, they were always like, convenience store owners or like fruit stall owners, and they were always angry and, screaming at the protagonists and talked with like really silly accents and oftentimes weren't even played by Korean people.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you're like, clearly these are, Chinese actors who are doing this kind of like funny Korean accent and playing essentially a caricature. And to me, that's incredibly offensive, and it was humiliating. because my parents owned a convenience store. I lived my family was the caricature in the movies, but I didn't feel like that. I didn't think I sounded like that or looked like that. I didn't think my parents behaved like that, and it's incredibly insulting to think that is how we're perceived, whoever they are, and I wanted to do something about that. I wanted to do something to start to change the narrative, change the image of Korean immigrants in North America. Yes, there's a lot of people who have laundromats or groceries or convenience stores or whatever, but there's a story behind why these people are operating these businesses, and I wanted to explore stories that went deeper into it so that, the audiences can understand there is a history, there's a backstory to these people.
Yeah. Your film is getting a lot of buzz at the festivals. What are you surprised by that reaction? Or you're like, I knew this was coming, or what was your...
If I knew it was coming, I feel like raising the finance part of it would have been a lot easier. No, I had no idea. I had no idea. I didn't, every step of the way, I didn't know that the script would be received well by anyone. I didn't know if it would raise financing. And every step we got past, it always felt like, okay, the next step, the next stage felt just as impossible and daunting as the previous. And so I and our team would never stopped and went like, oh, when we get to this point, it's going to be all great and, awards and praise. No, we thought, I hope we get there. I hope I hope we finish the movie. I hope we get to make the movie that we set out to make. Because so often you can have clear intentions, but not be able to execute it. And sometimes with no fault of your own.
Were you intentional or adamant about having the majority of the back and forth being Korean, especially?
I was very intentional.
Yeah.
And originally it was more Korean actually, and then it evolved over time to be a mix, and partially because in Canada, until recently, in order for a film to be Canadian and to be eligible for CAFCO tax credits and stuff like that, you have to have 50% or more English, French, or one of the indigenous languages. And so we had to, stay on side with the language part of it. But also, I didn't feel like that restriction necessarily made the film worse or anything. I actually thought, now this becomes just sort of a challenge to how to blend Korean and English together into, the way my sister and I speak, it's at this point an entirely made up language. There's words that we've just invented over the years and we've forgotten that they're not actual words and it is just this complete, mishmash of the two languages. And so, yeah, it's a bit like that in the film.
Yeah.
And that's neither Korean nor Canadian. It's such a distinct Korean-Canadian way of speaking.
Yeah, totally.